Hi everyone, welcome back to Rabbi's Reflection. I'm glad that you're joining with me today. We'll be continuing in our study of Kitchen Table Wisdom by Dr. Naomi Remen, and today reading the story Giving Darshan. Stay with us as we read through the story and then offer some reflections. Dying people have the power to heal the rest of us in unusual ways. Years afterwards, many people can remember what a dying person has said to them and carry it with them through their lives. Perhaps dying people give a sort of darshan to the rest of us in the same way that spiritual teachers do. The practice of darshan is very moving. The guru sits before his disciples and throws out a shower of small pieces of candy and glazed fruits, symbolic of the wisdom of his enlightened state. The students who catch the candies eat them and incorporate the sweetness of the guru's wisdom into themselves. The darshan we eat is woven into our fabric, as it were, and becomes a part of who we are. The sayings and perspectives of a dying person are often carried in this way, woven into our fabric, changing us from then on, helping us to live better. I carry in this way the death of a woman who in life had never been a close friend. She was outspoken and somewhat judgmental, and I had found her edge intimidating. Though I admired her work and we traveled in the same circles, I had always kept my distance. Even when I was told she had been diagnosed with cancer, I did not personally call, but thought about her and kept in touch with her struggle by calling mutual friends. Our paths had been converging for many years, but I had not known this, and so I was surprised when her husband called me to say that Mary was dying and wanted to see me. Certain of why she had called, I went. The woman who welcomed me to her bedroom was no one I had met before. Thin and completely bald, obviously gravely ill, her beauty was magnetic. As gracious as a queen, she patted her bed, indicating that I was to climb in and sit. I remember the 4 hours that followed as one of the most intimate, strengthening, and healing times I have experienced. We spoke of illness and pain, and she said with simplicity that she was no longer suffering. We spoke of the complexity which had characterized her life and all of her relationships, both family and friends. We told each other jokes. At one point, her husband joined us and we read Proverbs 31, a woman of valor, together. It was a favorite of hers. Certain of the lines are with me still. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. We all drank Snapple, rolling it around in our mouths as if it were fine wine. Part of our discussion turned around the power of this time of dying in a person's life. She had experienced a liberation from some lifelong limitations and self-doubts, and felt that she could now reach others in ways not previously possible. She felt grateful for this and for the clarity of vision that seemed to allow her to release her habit of anger and judgment and see the beauty in others. She wondered why this gift had been given her at this time, and if it was to be used in some way. I told her that I felt that if it was, she would be shown how to use it. As our time together ended, I felt reluctant to go, as if I had been granted an audience with the High Lama. But it was only Mary. Eventually she fell asleep in the middle of a sentence, and I left. A few days later, her husband called to say that she had gone into coma, and asked me if I wanted to come and say goodbye. Her house was very still and peaceful. Climbing the stairs to her bedroom, I had the sense of a holy silence that she had somehow drawn around her. Mary lay in her bed in a deep coma, breathing shallowly. I took her hand and sat with her for a while, thinking of our last conversation. Suddenly her eyes were open. They were as clear as a young child's and as honest. In the intensity of her gaze, I felt naked, seen in all my particulars and incompleteness. Yet I did not feel embarrassed or even vulnerable. She looked at me in this way for a long while, and then she smiled gently and said, "I love you." Closing her eyes, she slipped back into coma. I have carried the moment with me as a sort of touchstone. Her husband tells me that many of the people who came to see her after she went into coma had experiences similar to mine. She had opened her eyes and met with them in the same singular way, delivering the same last message. And looking back on it, it was a pure moment of intimacy, and the power of it is not easily describable. I think of it as a sort of null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is a research principle that applies only when one is studying universal laws and principles, forces that hold in all circumstances and at all times. It states that should one find only a single instance in which the law does not hold, the law itself has been invalidated. There are laws of our inner world that bind each of us as firmly as gravity. Beliefs we carry about ourselves and about life in general that we experience as true in all conditions and at all times. A feeling of personal unworthiness is one such inner law. One moment of unconditional love may call into question a lifetime of feeling unworthy and invalidate it. Perhaps these final moments with me and the others were a time of healing for Mary as well. After years of anger and self-doubt, the words of Proverbs had finally become true for her. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good, her candle goeth not out by night. This week, Dr. Remen helps us discover what can be a very healing moment, the moment close to one's death, and the power that the person who's dying is able to give and to bestow blessings upon the people that they encounter. I guess before we start the story, I did want to pause and to honor those who've had experience where maybe this wasn't a moment of blessing. Maybe the person who was at their deathbed actually said something that was hurtful, and maybe some of us carry that around with us as well. I know I personally do. And I think it can become hard then, when you think of the person, to think of all of the blessings and all of the things that they've given us in our life. So I just want to honor that at the beginning, because I know I've personally experienced that. And so perhaps if you have as well, that you might be hard for you to take in this story and the lessons. But I guess what I think I'm taking from it is the power of, if you've had that experience, the power of repair, the power of the ability to give someone some tremendous blessing that they can hold on to for the rest of their lives. So maybe we've had that experience personally, or maybe we want to think about what we might be able to offer others at the moments perhaps closest to our death. As Dr. Remen writes, kind of reporting what her friend Mary felt, that there's a certain liberation towards the end of death. I think that's a little paradoxical for some of us to think about, but there is a liberation at the end of death, or at the end, as death is imminent. There's a release from perhaps the other strictures that we feel on a regular basis, and allows us to reach perhaps deeper into ourselves and to others as well, those in our surroundings. Perhaps one immediate lesson to take, which might be really hard, is how can we live like that every day? I don't think that's easy, and perhaps that's not even possible. But imagining the moment of your death might allow you and give you power to liberate you, to release you from perhaps certain limitations that you didn't realize were weighing on you. But nevertheless, if we're able to get to that place where we feel that there's a certain blessing in it, we can then begin to bless others. If we're able to, I guess, can we imagine the power that we would have if we were able to communicate to someone the unconditional love that we have for them, or that they brought for us when we were at our deathbeds? What would that give to the other person? Can we imagine the power that would give? I think we can have an inkling of it, but I think, as Dr. Remen writes, or reflects on, that this would be as she says, a touchstone for her, something that she would go back to again and again. Imagine our loved ones, our descendants. We can imagine that in the future they will have moments of doubt and worry and sadness and hardship. But if they remember the words that we told them, the words that we said kind of at our final messages to them, perhaps that might do good in helping them out, and giving them more blessing, and then allowing them to bless themselves and bless others. So I hope for you this week, as you're reflecting on this story, that we think about perhaps the limitations that are in our life, but the man-made ones, the human-made, the self-made limitations, and how we might be able to release those. And perhaps then secondly is, what would we want to say to our loved ones and to those that matter to us, even in our kind of larger orbit, as we learned from Dr. Remen, that this woman, Mary, and her weren't family, they weren't even friends, but they were kind of colleagues and acquaintances. But yet she still felt like she had a message to give to Dr. Remen. So who are those people kind of maybe in the extended outer orbit that we don't necessarily think of as our family or as our close friends, but that we also want to provide blessings with? So hopefully that's given you some space for some thoughtful reflection, and I look forward to seeing you soon.